Welcome. One of the last episodes of 2022 to the CHASMDUDE Experience. That's right, this time we're going to be covering a lot of Chasm-related things. Amazing Spider-Man 14, Dark Web number 1 amongst them. Before we get started, I gotta thank our patrons at patreon.com/Spideydude Network. Our patrons such as Vacuum, Scott, Greg, Phoenician, Kale, Georgia, Cindy, Catherine, Jurgen, Keegar, and Laura. Thank you guys for your support of the Spideydude Radio Network. You can go over to patreon.com/Spideydude Network for more information. You can also go over to Spidey-Dude.com. Check out all our other shows here on the network, such as Clone Saga Chronicles, Spectacular Radio, part of the Spideydude Radio Network Vault. We've got the Sal Buscema Era podcast. We got Make Mine Mayday, and Voices from the Erie, a Gargoyles podcast. Coming soon, we'll have the Books of X show. It'll be Patreon first, but can you guys hear me better now? All right, so the Spideydude Experience, obviously, it's the CHASMDUDE Experience. So finally, after a long sabbatical, we are back. We're going to be playing a lot of catch-up in this episode, so hopefully you guys will enjoy it. Before we get started, of course, if you're listening to the audio edition, pay us no mind, as we're going to have some references to visual aids and or live comments, as these are live streamed over on youtube.com/Spideydude Radio Network. We've seen a massive increase in the past year. I can't wait for 2023 and see what it holds for us. I'm Zach Joyner. Hello, everybody. And in this episode, we're going to be covering, like I said, dark web-related materials. We probably won't cover all the dark web stuff. There'll be a Patreon exclusive where we're covering all the ancillary stuff, such as X-Men and Ms. Marvel and Gold Goblin, maybe. Yeah. So, yes. And we got, I'm not alone. We have the executive producer of the program, Mr. Neil Bogenreiter.
No way I put up Kelly's graphic. There we go.
Also the host of Books of X.
Yes, coming in January 2023, I promise.
And we have Dark Adam Shingle, our art apologist.
There we go.
What's up, everybody?
I got the right graphic this time.
So, hey. You did the right graphic. Paul will be joining us later, so probably putting his child down for the
God! Putting down his child.
Putting his child down to sleep, Neil. You took it dark.
Welcome.
All right. 3 minutes in and I've already cussed. Okay.
Hey,
if it's laggy, I apologize. My internet's being bad. So...
we have no Facebook because I guess it deleted itself. So, oh.
Go live. Okay. Looks like this broadcast is deleted on Facebook. Try creating a new broadcast. All right, so
it's fine.
We'll delete it on Facebook.
Okay.
And then I can always do this.
Oh, yeah, we can add a new one. Yeah.
There we go. So we're live on Facebook. Okay. So, it's one of our final shows of the year. I don't know if we're going to do a show next week. It is my birthday next week.
I don't think we're going to do another show by the end of the year. I think this is a good place to kind of call it for the 2022.
Yeah, so I had thought about doing a special episode dedicated to Stanley because it would have been his 100th birthday.
We can play Gamerman again. He's in that game.
No. All right. So if you're watching this live, let us know in the comments section down below. Okay. So Matt was waiting for the Facebook. I'm glad that the Facebook stream is on there. Okay. Do you want to just jump right in? We're covering. How do we want to do this?
So I know we're covering ASM 14, and then I think Dark Web number 1, and what is it? ASM 15, right? Let me check the banner. Oh, Spider-Man number 3, Slotman.
Yeah.
Okay. We kind of promised it. We can kind of go over that one, but there's much more vivid meat to eat.
Yeah, I would say we do 15 and we kind of like skim through Slotman 3.
Yeah, so
we'll leave that one to Paul. That's his bread and butter. So
CHASMDUDE Experience. If you haven't seen, we have new branding on the banner. It is nice and.
I've been waiting to use this. I had the CHASMDUDE thumbnail made for so long. I was like, Zach, can I use it? Zach, can I use it? Zach, can I use it? And eventually he broke down and just said, sure, whatever. Just stop talking to me.
I don't have a use for this episode.
We went over it last week. We did.
I still don't have enough booze for this episode.
Oh, I thought you were saying news. Oh, I'm sorry.
Booze. Alcoholic beverages. There's not enough alcohol for. All right, so this is divided up into 4 parts. Zeb Wells is the writer.
Oh, that was a mistake. My lips are chapped, and that was not a good thing to put on them. Okay. So yeah, it's divided into seasons.
Divided into spring, summer, fall, winter. Michael Dowling is the artist for spring. Wasn't he in one of the ones in Beyond?
Yeah. So yeah, Michael Dowling was one of the artists. I think it was for the Craven arc and the arc where Queen Goblin came in. Oh shit, that's fighting words.
Ow. Venkman.
For those of you who are listening in audio format, Venkman has said CHASMDUDE Experience, guaranteed more fun than watching the Cowboys lose.
Sounds like an Eagles fan. I knew there was something wrong with you there, Venkman.
But anyway, Summer is drawn by Kyle Hotz. Is it Kyle Hotz or Hotz?
I've always said Hotz. This is his Spider-Man book.
Is it?
Mm-hmm. But he did notably draw the Osborne Journal in the 90s.
That is true. Fall is drawn by Spider-Man alum Terry Dodson and inked by Rachel Dodson, his wife.
Yes, and colored by Derry.
Oh, yeah. That might be why the colors aren't as good. But we'll talk about that later. And winter is done by Ryan Stegman, who we all know as the Renew Your Vows and Venom guy. With Tim...
Superior Spider-Man.
Okay. With Tim Townsend with J.P. Mayer on inks and Matt Hollingsworth on colors. All right. Into the abyss we go. Or more accurately, into the chasm we go.
No.
Boo. Boo. Okay. So in spring, Janine walks in on Ben, who is going by Baja Blast now, who just raided another Beyond Corporation safe house, and he says, Peter took everything from me and I want it back, all of it. And Janine kind of asks him when this experience is going to end, and Ben goes through like 2 paragraphs of dialogue that I'm too tired to read, and he says that something is calling him, and the equipment he's been stealing is an old Skunkworks program called Project Purgatory. And Zeb Wells makes a note, or Nick Lowe makes a note, that is from New Mutants Volume 3, Number 9, which I believe is the late aughts, if anyone cares to correct me on that. Okay.
I don't read X-Men.
Neither do I, but here we are. But Janine goes to Grand Central Station and has herself a meal and has a chat with, is it Jerry? They have a conversation about Janine Cohen, like, this guy saved me from a bad place, but it's going bad again. And Barb, who I guess is the coffee lady, says that the dishwasher is 5 minutes away. And he goes, yeah, I recognize you, Janine Godby. I gotcha. And Janine says, I'm not going back. I've served my nickel. And she shanks him with a fork in the hand, breaks his leg, and runs away to Ben and says, you know what? I'm done trying. I'm with you all the way. And Ben puts on his Baja Blast mask, and we're off to the races. In the summer, Kyle Holtz is taken over, and Ben is looking at Peter's apartment, which suspiciously has no bars over the windows, despite this being Alphabet City. And despite John Romita Jr. having drawn bars over the windows before. Ben is approached by the debt collector, who mistakes him for Peter Parker. And Ben says, I'm leaving now. I don't have an aunt. Stop bullying her. Whatever. I'm going away. Bye. Ben brings a sample of decades-old skin to Janine, and they go through what I guess is the door from Slot's Horizon arc to Limbo, where Madeline Pryor, aka the Goblin Queen, we're gonna get those two. We're gonna get Queen Goblin and Goblin Queen confused more than once on this show, I'm guessing. And the demons in Limbo are calling Janine an empty husk, an unreal thing, until she gets distracted by them saying genetic detritus, not a real boy. And surprise, surprise, it's Baja Blast here to ruin the day. Ben is talking with Matt. Jesus Christ, there's more than one redhead. We're getting confused.
Queen.
Yeah. So Ben's kind of like, oh, you know what? The people who are mocking you sound like they're mocking me too. Maybe we should team up. And Janine says, here, have this fruit thing. I don't know what it is. It looks like a dried fig. I don't know. What is this?
Looks like a heart.
I got no idea. It looks like a soul-sucking thing. I think that's what it actually is. But Madeline says, Limbo has taken on the flavor of its queen, calling others who know my pain, calling you home. So if you recall... okay. I'm not doing it. I'm gonna be kind to Zach for this last episode of the podcast. I'm not gonna call her that.
Right.
But if you recall, in New Mutants number 25 by Vita Ayala, Magic ceded control of Limbo over to Goblin Queen, who said, "Oh, I'm a good girl now. Trust me, I guess." Clearly, that trust was misplaced. Let's ignore that though. Fall appears. Terry Dodson takes over for the art on this one, as we said earlier, and they reference the Free Comic Book Day issue of this past year, where Ben and Maddie made a mailbox come to life to attack Spider-Man. And Ben says, give me your army, let me provide coverage so you can get what you want. I actually still don't know what she wants, but I kind of don't care at this point. I'm going to be honest. And Janine and Maddie have a talk out on the balcony of a tower in her castle. And Janine says, I'm tired of being worthless. This kind of sucks. And Maddie says, you know what? I like you. Have a dead finger. And she stabs Janine with a finger, and she turns into Hallows Eve, who has multiple masks. A mask to curse them, a mask to bleed them, and a mask to splinter bone. Winter has come. And Ben is sitting out in front of Peter's apartment again, and the debt collector is giving him a hard time again. Peter says, my name... Ben says, my name is Ben something, anyways, and starts beating the absolute tar out of him. Ben drags him back to Limbo. We find out the debt collector's name is Gus, and that he has been a very naughty boy. use something about his attic and all of his special tools, which indicates, I guess, he's a serial killer or like a hitman for the mob, which raises more questions than it answers about what Peter got mixed up in that is causing them to collect debts from him. But Maddie gives him a fruit, and Gus eats it, and I guess it takes away his soul. Sure, I don't know. She sniffs the soul. She like inhales it through her nose. That's weird. And she goes, "This was an evil, evil man." And they stand in front of the cauldron. Madeline is having visions of Jean Grey, even though I think Madeline is pretty much accepted at this point that she isn't Jean Grey, which raises a lot of questions about characterization here. While Ben is resting his thoughts on stealing Peter Parker's soul because it belongs to him. Next, Dark Web. Let's go. All right, let's good graze around the horn. Adam.
Oh, I don't know. C+, B-, something like that.
Okay. Zach.
D+.
Giving it a C-. I think that's indicative that like we're pretty universal in our grades. I bet how much. Okay, real quick. Let's play a game of what would Paul grade it. What do you think, guys? Think
Probably
A-?
plus.
I don't know.
A-, I think is mine. Adam.
I'll say B+.
Okay.
Listen, here's the thing, and this is where I'm going to probably go on. I'm going to let y'all go first, your thoughts, and then I'll probably go on my rant.
Okay. Adam, you want to go first?
I guess. My big positive was I thought each artist fit their respective chapter and or season very well. Yeah, because especially Kyle Hotz with all the like underworld limbo demon stuff, and then Stegman with the winter portion, and then Dowling with spring. I thought his style fit that kind of like Janine's escape thing pretty well. So I guess that's my big positive is the art usually, as it usually is. I guess I thought it was kind of interesting in the beginning writing wise, but there's just I don't know, it's dark in a way that I find kind of unappealing. And
if I can complete your thought there, it's kind of like Cold Steel the Hedgehog. Where it's all edge, no point.
A little bit, I guess, because like I think like Ben's character just gets worse for me as it goes on.
Sorry.
Through the various seasons. There is a bit of an edginess there that seems, like you said, Neil, like there's no point to it a little bit. And I'm just not totally feeling it. But I wasn't feeling this whole chasm thing with Ben anyway, and I'm not like a huge Ben fan. Like I like him, but I still feel like this was kind of the wrong thing to do with him. But I think that's like my thoughts in a nutshell, basically. I mean, yeah.
I guess I'll go before we bring Paul in, just because I don't know. So Adam is correct. The best part of this issue is the art. Here's my weird take. If you remove the fact that this is Ben Reilly and Janine Godbey from this issue, it's really good. The best way to make this issue good is pretend that it's not Ben Reilly, but it's a random clone who has schizophrenia, and they got the wrong redhead out of prison. That's the best way to read this issue to make it readable.
If this side, I wouldn't have a single problem with any of it.
The issue to me is that one, Ben Reilly's anger is misplaced completely. If we go back and read ASM 93, Peter went out of his way to help Ben. Like he almost jumped into the green stuff he almost jumped into Nickelodeon slime to save Ben from being consumed by it. So now it just feels like not necessarily an inconsistency or a plot hole, but it feels like Ben's motivation is completely unsympathetic because he's misplacing his anger without any reason, to be honest, without any reason that we can discern, onto the wrong person. That makes it a lot harder for me to sympathize with his plight or his immediate solution. So, Zach, you sound like you were about to say something.
No. Go ahead.
But it just feels like him acting as though Peter made a very conscious decision to keep his memories blocked is kind of delusional, and it also follows the same not necessarily what's the word, the same idiot ball plot where Maxine gives. Remember when Maxine gave Ben the laser helmet in ASM 93, and she said, "Go give this to Peter and have him put it on. It'll fix everything, I promise." And Ben's like, "Hey Peter, the pink-haired lady told me to give you this helmet that'll bore lasers into your eyeballs and give me your memories. This will all work out, I promise." And then Madeline Pryor's solution is just, "Hey Peter, eat this fruit. It'll take your soul and give it to me, but it'll all work out, I promise." So it feels like Zeb Wells is just repeating not necessarily the same plot point, but it feels like he's making the same mistakes, but it's not like he's being tricked into making the same mistake. It's just the same mistake over and over again. I don't know. It just feels like Zeb Wells is twisting the plot and also Ben's motivations to serve the plot.
Yeah, I don't really like that it's all like that Ben is totally, misunderstanding what happened, but I guess that's because his mind is scrambled or whatever, but I still don't like it.
It's weird because we'll see in ASM 15 that Ben has, or none of ASM, Dark Web, that Ben has apparently very selective memory degradation because he remembers certain things very specifically. He remembers Norman Osborn killing him very clearly, but why he doesn't remember Peter almost jumping into the Nickelodeon slime to save him is beyond me. I don't know. Paul, you've been here for 5 minutes and you haven't said anything. What's up?
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Because I read this, I knew exactly what would happen. Y'all be like, "I can't believe what they're doing to Ben Reilly. There's a girlfriend that only 4 people cared about before this comic book. Oh my God." It's like, I don't know. I kind of knew what I was going to walk into.
No, that's not fair, Paul. Zach is 5 people. You can't say 4.
Yeah,
Zach is
listen, I joke mainly because, listen, I'll be honest. It took me a while to figure out that see, I'm terrible with names. I'm so bad with names. Janine. Is it Janie? Is that her name? Janine. Yeah, Janine. Thank you. Janine. I knew, obviously, I mean, because I'm a G. I'm an OG. I went back. I've read the majority of the Clone Saga. Not all of it. Lord knows, I've not read all of it. I'd say I've at least at this point read at least 80% of it. And I read Lost Years, and it took me a long time to figure out. I'm like, oh, that's the same girl. Got it. Okay. Like, I always forget. Like, oh yeah, it's her. So, and listen, I'll never diminish what people love about their comics, and obviously I respect Zach's love of Clone Saga more than probably most people do. So and this is where we're going back to our original argument, back when the whole chasm situation happened. I personally don't like this whole angle of the Inferno with the Goblin Queen and Chasm. I hate it. Like, I hate this. I hate Inferno Part 2. It just drives me nuts.
Actually, Paul, real quick, to be honest, you and I are on the same page on that one. As someone who enjoys the overall status quo of what's going on X-Men right now, this crossover between the two is completely unnecessary and I think reductive.
It's awful. It's straight up awful. Sorry.
Okay, I'm glad we have at least one thing in common right now.
Yes, and listen, like I and you, everyone who's watched this show or listened to this podcast should by now know that I'm a Chasm fan. I like it, and I know a lot of you guys don't think it was earned. The whole Ben and his memories and everything, it all worked for me. Like and that's the thing is like one of the things I would say about memory is and I'm not like a psychologist or whatever, but the thing is there is we've all heard selective memory, right? And I think part of it is that I think there's he's remembering things, one, that is either traumatizing to him, or two, things that he's bitter about to form his his opinion. He's selecting to forget and to not like think about or manipulate certain things in his head a certain way. That's common for anyone for whatever reason, et cetera, et cetera. But the one thing I think what makes it interesting is with the whole Beyond storyline is that with them manipulating things, all those normal things that we do as normal people, that those are all exaggerated and perverted in some ways now because of what they did to Ben and the fact that he's losing those memories. He doesn't know what exactly is what's fleeting, what's been manipulated, so he's all over the place. And that's going to work for some people. It's not going to work for others. I don't expect it to work for especially for Zach, because he's a giant Ben Reilly fan. But I listen, as a Ben Reilly fan from the '90s, I understand what they. I understand why people don't like it, but I like it because I just don't think. And I know this is controversial for Zach here. We should have a big debate about it, but I personally don't think there's that much of a difference between Ben and Peter. There's differences, but they're not like. I don't know if it's worth keeping both them around, especially with Miles around. I think there's just not. He's not that engaging with Peter together. I think it makes more sense what's going on now. That's my opinion. It doesn't have to be your opinion, Zach, or anyone else's. So I say all that to say, what they're doing now with the character. I like Chasm. I like in this comic book with the character. I like where they're going with it. I like all this. We'll get to Janine here in a second. But I like all this stuff. I just don't like the storyline with the Goblin Queen. I hate it. Like, it's terrible. Listen, sorry. I went through Inferno back in the 80s, and it was weird then as a kid, and I knew this is like even then I had in my mind, and I'm not saying I was super smart, but in my head I'm like, this is just too much. I'm like, this is over the top. I knew even then it was. And so there's the same thing here now. It's like, okay, whatever. But the one thing I'll give it some credit for is that there is some cool setup because it's given us Hollow's Eve, which I gotta tell you, I don't like any of this, but this I fucking loved.
Okay, real quick, I want to give Zach a chance to push back because he looks like he's itching for a bruising.
Well, I'm almost done. He can retort here in a second. I'm almost done.
Okay.
Sorry, give me 1 second. I'm almost done. I literally have to just add a few more things. I'm done. I loved where Goblin Queen is giving Hollow Eve her powers. I love that whole aspect of the different masks she wears. Love that. That was a great idea. And the fact they made one thing you gotta remember too. If you're a G like me, you remember that Hobgoblin got turned into a creature thing back in the original Inferno, and that turned into Devo Goblin. So the fact we're getting a Hollow Eve Spider-Man character out of this whole thing, it feels appropriate. It feels like it's kind of not earned, but it's a cool callback a little bit. And I like the idea that she's kind of facing her own kind of different personalities and her own traumas, or that Goblin Queen is taking advantage of. And again, you don't have to like it. You don't have to agree with it, but I like it. I don't really have an affinity for the character before with Lost Years. Thought Lost Years was fine. I thought, I thought her coming back was more of a thing for Ben than anything to kind of, give him a love interest and give him, a moral compass of some sorts. And now that, she's kind of been dragged through all this and is struggling herself and has her own dark past. I like that the Goblin Queen is taking advantage of it because personally, I don't think these characters are going to stay bad guys forever. There's probably going to be the anti-hero a little bit, potentially. Eventually. But if it's not, that's cool too. I think these are really interesting characters outside of the stupid Infernal Part 2 storyline. But I like this. I think the art, the different like storylines and art stuff is whatever. That was kind of jarring. But for the most part, I liked learning more about Chasm and Hollow Z. And that's what I like about this issue. So I like it.
So real quick, I did a little bit of last minute research while I was letting Paul talk. I found out what Project Purgatory is. So at the end of the original Inferno, the New Mutants gave like a bunch of mutants that were rescued to the government, and they basically turned those mutants into like this elite paramilitary death squad. So I don't know what that has to do with this now, but I guess
wait. Who were the team? Who were the team? Who were the mutants?
I don't know. I'm just looking at what someone sent me.
I don't remember that at all about the government, because the government at the time.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go.
There's the Exterminators, which there was, that was like that's where Boom Boom Richter, Whiz Kid, Archie, and everyone they all kind of formed that team out of the original X Factor comics that Rusty and Skids were a part of. Is that who they're referring to?
Okay, so here's what I found. This is on the Marvel Wiki. Following the Inferno crisis, the United States Army founded Project Purgatory to research the fields of supernatural and paranormal. One of the recruited scientists, Dr. Nock, developed technology to use the X gene positive infants Naztir kidnapped, and the New Mutants and Exterminators delivered to them to open portals to Limbo. General Ulysses, Dr. Nock, and a trained band of military soldiers established a military base in Limbo, the Hatchery. At the base, they continued to experiment both on babies and demons and on the Inferno babies and train new soldiers. So I think, yeah,
that's got to be more of a recent thing.
This is Zeb Wells' New Mutants run during the Utopia era.
That's why, yeah, because I was like, "There's no way." At
the end of Inferno, they gave those babies to the government.
That makes sense. That makes more sense because they probably thought, but the writers were like, "Oh, these babies will be, adopted and whatever," and then Zeb Wells.
These babies will be treated very well by the government known for MK Ultra.
Yeah, well, that is that was a retro thing, which is good. That's not a bad idea. I think it's
I just think it's funny that like the mutants who are known for being very wary of persecution went to the government known for like co-intel pro and said, "Hey, these guys will be great to take care of these."
To be fair, X Factor. You had X Factor, and they were already taking care of, like I brought up, Skids and Rusty and Leech and Artie. Like they are all part of.
Zach's asking for Galactus to eat the planet.
Well, I'm just saying that like there was reason to trust the government. There was reason for as far as mutants go at that time.
When Zach sees the X-Men in his Spider-Man book, read, get the Sentinels.
Seriously.
Okay, Zach, you've been champing at the bit. I want you to go get him, Tiger.
When you have a character that is divergent from the original character, such as Ben and Peter. Ben has his own unique experiences. Ben has his own thoughts on things and has his own perspectives. We've seen some of those things through the years, mainly written by J.M. DeMatteis. And so when we get to the Beyond stuff and you strip away everything, supposedly, that makes Ben, you're just leaving this husk of a character and calling him Ben Reilly. This is not Ben Reilly. And this is not even like, oh, it's the 29th clone of Ben Reilly, because like that to me is such a cop-out. But regardless, the Janine stuff doesn't bother me as much. I'm okay with femme fatale.
That's cool. I'm glad you are. I honestly thought you were going to hate it.
However, if it's going to be, I'm interested. Like, I'm interested legitimately in that miniseries, because Janine at her core is a tortured soul. And I understand what you were saying, Paul, about, does Ben need to be in New York with Peter? The answer to that question, in my opinion, is no. I think you've proved that with Kane. You could put him in San Francisco. You could put him in Hollywood. You could put him somewhere else. You could do something else with Ben. You could have him on the road and be basically, hand
to mouth. That would be interesting.
Yeah, I mean that's essentially what we were getting with, like the Lost Years, like Renegade, where he's going from town to town, driving on his motorcycle. I would be down to see that, right? I would be down to, to have, Ben Reilly played by Lorenzo Lamas,
So you're saying that you want Ben, you want the ZZ Top version of Peter Parker?
I would like the 70s Hulk version of Peter Parker.
Can I offer something real quick?
Sure.
Okay. So I like to think that I've been very consistent in my position that Ben Reilly should never have come back. Slot bringing him back was a mistake, and this is reinforced by the fact that, like, when Beyond ended, Nick Lowe said, "Well, we didn't know what to do with Ben because we had Miles in the same position. So why did you bring him back in the first place?" I like to think that I've been very principled in my position that Ben Reilly coming back, period, was a mistake. And I think that the trajectory Ben's character has been on since Clone Conspiracy has kind of reinforced that position. And I just think there's no getting me out of that pit. And you can say I'm set in my ways, but I like to at least take credit for the fact that I'm very consistent in my position on that.
Well,
it's such a loaded question. You know what I mean? Like, it's like that could be like honestly, that could be a whole episode of itself, Zach. I mean, like, right? I mean, it's like you can argue all of that for a good conversations too. I'll shut up now. Sorry.
But my point is that by having the plot take away all of things that make Ben, are you trying to get people to root for his redemption? Or are you just turning him evil to turn him evil? And I felt like that at least Beyond tried to do a little bit better job of explaining his motivations by taking everything away from him. But it's better than Clone Conspiracy, because Clone Conspiracy was just terrible. So I am at the point where I'm like, okay, I'm going to read this because of the show. Am I going to be excited about it? No. And it's just so in terms of this issue specifically, I thought it was clever the way they did the seasons of, like, winter and everything like that, different artists.
It's a neat little framing device.
It was a good framing device. And this definitely leads to maybe getting some answers and some resolutions to, larger things. I read that MJ Black Cat issue today, and okay.
Yeah, we're on the same page on that one, Zach.
My least favorite Jed McKay issue in a long time.
Yep.
So
this was a big disappointment for me. The Jed McKay MJ Black Cat stuff, that was kind of disappointing.
Yeah, very disappointing.
I'll get into that eventually.
My thing is I agree with Paul and I agree with Neil. The X-Men element of this is needless, because clones with Spider-Man and clones with X-Men are oranges and mangoes.
Not even apples. They're like mangoes.
No. It's oranges and grenades, in my opinion.
You'd be.
But like they're both fruits because technically they're clones, but it's an entirely different thing for spider clones versus X-Men clones. X-Men in itself could be split off and splintered off and be its own thing, an own entity, not related to the rest of the Marvel universe, and I would be okay.
Absolutely.
And
1000%.
as the resident expert here, see what I did there?
Hang on. Damn it.
Okay. Anyways, as resident expert, as someone who was kind of interested in where Wells was taking Maddie in Hellions and then where Vita Ayala took her in New Mutants, not necessarily because I was like, oh, this is an interesting direction, but because it's like, I kind of like this. Let's see how this plays out. Wells kind of derailed Maddie's character development from New Mutants to put her in this position like, oh, look, I've got an evil clone now. Yay, I can do whatever I want. It's just like, I'm not like offended. It's just like, once again, we are sacrificing character development for the sake of the plot.
It comes back to some of the things I've said in the past over the years. When do the characters drive the plot or the plot drive the characters? And right now it feels like with Ben and Madeline, and a lesser extent Janine, because at least with this plot, you're going to get some character exploration. It isn't as cut and dry as when I, make that point, are the characters driving the plot? Sometimes a plot can drive a character in an interesting dynamic, especially when you have a character that doesn't have a lot of depth to them. So what do we know about Janine? We know that she, was abused by her father, physically, possibly sexually. She carries a lot of trauma with her. She carries a lot of guilt over killing her dad. So much so that she's been running from life her whole life. And, at the end of Redemption, she turns herself in after being manipulated emotionally by Kane. Kane had manipulated, her into faking her own death and everything like that. And so this is a woman that I don't think she knows who she actually is at her core. And so to have Madeline turn her evil, there's a difference between being lost and being evil. And I'll be very interested to see if you see that dichotomy in the miniseries.
That's what to point out, that we have that this change is for Janine is going to stick around a lot longer than just Dark Web.
Yeah, so it seems like they're going to try to do something with it, and I'm like, okay, all right, fine. I'm all for more femme fatale villainesses.
And she looks freaking awesome. That's a great costume, man.
Yeah, I do like the look and the power gimmick. I think that's cool.
I think it depends on the artist. I like Ed McGuinness's take on it more than I like Dodson's. I just think
seriously? Dodson looks fantastic.
Well, if I had a con for the artwork, Dodson was
rough. This was not one of my favorite Dodson issues.
Listen. I want to be very clear. Dodson is hit and miss because I've read. Go look at the art for Princess Leia, the first, Princess Leia solo comic at Marvel, that when they got the new canon. And people know I'm a big Star Wars fan. I read pretty much all the Star Wars comics for the most part. And I can tell you right now, that art was so inconsistent. Where I was like, people were like myself, who were like, oh, I love this art. And then like you, Neil, I was you. And I'm like, this is good art. And I'd be showing them panels that were just so awful. They're like,
that was like in his
Go
story for Amazing Fantasy 1000 with Busiek, like it was like that too. There were some panels that were definitely rushed. I think his Marvel work is him and his wife's Marvel work is just rushed these days. Because these poor artists at Marvel are.
I think part of it is
you can tell when Dodson the schedule.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so I think you can tell when Dodson is rushed by the amount of negative space on his pages. And I think that is indicative on these ones. you can like there's pages where like it's just the characters and like they're the that's like not an unheard of thing in comics. But to me, I think it's like the page, the establishing shot of the tower balcony with Janine and Goblin Queen feels very empty and rushed to me. Like the kind of just scribbled on details. There's certain panels where I think Dodson does a really good job of conveying emotion. But to me, it just feels like I've seen Dodson's image work on Adventure Man. That's some really good Dodson art. It set a new standard for me in terms of how I view his art. But to me, this just felt really rushed.
Well, I think that listen, every artist has deadlines. Every artist will rush things for the most part, unless they have they're doing only one story. These regular artists, right now they're cutting corners. And that's not uncommon for all comic book artists. Every artist is going to cut corners when you're doing that I said before, that assembly line conveyor belt, thing where you're pumping out, art on this kind of a mechanical way a little bit. There's an art to that art, if that makes any sense, because you're going to have to cut corners here and there. I think with Dodson is that he doesn't cover up those cut corners better than other people. He makes it more obvious. And I think it's funny, Adam, you and I both, and you, Neil, we all kind of pinpoint exactly where we can see those corners are cut when they're obvious. It's different when you can kind of get away with certain things. And there's tricks to the trade. Again, I'm not an artist, so I can't really say that, but I know there is. And the good artists are able to do it, and you don't really notice a lot of it because they do certain tricks and certain close-ups. And that's the kind of thing I think that, it's not just negative space either. It's close-ups, those things. But I think back then the artist drove more of the script and the plot of the story than they do now. And so because the writers have more power, not more power, but they have more leadway and they lead the story rather than the other way around, those artists they can't do things to their strengths. They have to kind of force themselves to do what the script says for the most part. And so they have to do these small wide shot panels of them at a table or at this setting. Whereas before you have like a Sal Buscema. Again, I'm not comparing Sal Buscema as a masterclass storyteller in comic books, but you see what I'm saying though. You have someone leading the story like Sal Buscema, whereas Dodson has to get the script from someone and says, page 3, panel 1, panel 2, panel 3. This is what's going to happen. Of course, they're going to have some leeway, but there's less. You know what I mean? Like there's less of that. What's his name? Zeb Wells doesn't know the strengths and weaknesses of Terry Dodson, very as well as Terry Dodson than himself. So it's like lacking that in comics right now in the way that's written. It does go against the artist a little bit and it forces them to be outside their comfort zone and their wheelhouse. And I think sometimes the storytelling can suffer a little bit or be rushed, as we've seen here, because Dodson's not the only one. And I think part of it is because they're not leading the story like a Rob Liefeld or Todd McFarlane or Jim Lee, where they're doing the Marvel style a lot of times. And then from a plot. Again, I'm assuming that, especially in something so precise as this is definitely script driven opposed to plot driven, as what you're saying. So you're seeing that. I think a lot of it you're seeing just the byproduct of just the way stories are written in comic books in general.
And I think it also doesn't help that I am an artist. I'm self-taught, obviously.
Of course, yeah.
But I think it's easier for me to kind of catch the places where they cut corners. Not necessarily saying like, oh, I'm so good, I can see where the artist didn't ink the page right. But like I think I'm more acutely aware of where artists didn't have time to like ink something as cleanly as they wanted to. Yeah, and as someone who is doing a creator-owned book right now, you are correct that Zeb Wells is not going to be as intimately aware of like an art of like 4 different artists as have you ever read Transformers More Than Meets the Eye, Paul?
I've read a number of Transformer comics, but I don't know if I read that specifically.
But basically, like what happened was that James Roberts would give Alex Milne, the main line artist, like notes on like what he wants on the page, and Milne would kind of write back and say like, okay, so this is what I can do. here's some suggestions of what we can do to kind of replace things that are a little outside of my comfort zone, or like are just not timeline feasible.
And that's quasi Marvel style, because you're not telling the artist this is what's going to happen, and you're giving it to them. There's that, like you said, there's a little more leeway. Like John Romita Jr. is a great example. He talks about he can't stand scripts. He loves Marvel style, where he gets a plot. Here's a page, is what needs to happen, and he fleshes out the page the way he wants to have happen. And that's, funny enough, and I didn't know this at the time, that's how freaking Man Without Fear by Frank Miller and John Romita Jr. was written. It was Marvel style. And because Frank Miller knew that's what an artist like himself would want. He wouldn't want a script like, this is what I want. He says, no, this is what's going to happen. And then he just tells John, Romita Jr. what he wants to do. And then John does it. And it fleshes it out. So I think that's where, to be honest, I think that's what they're doing with the new Marvel series, Spider-Man series now. So it's just interesting. And I think Zeb's adapting to, I take it back. I think he's still giving them scripts, but there's a lot more freedom in what he's doing. So, which I think most good writers will just do. They'll say, "Here's what needs to happen," but there's a lot more. But they still keep the main story tight to their script, so they're still there. And I think this obviously is definitely script driven. I don't think there's no secret about that, I'm assuming. But that being said, I think this book was fine. I just don't like anything with Goblin Queen in it. So, but like Dark Web that's pretty much a review for anything Dark Web. To be quite honest.
So real quick, I know I'm kind of going backwards, and I'm kind of cheating because I'm talking about ASM 15, and part of me realized like way back in April when Chasm was first announced that like he was meant to be like a new Venom, right?
Sure.
In terms of like character archetypes. I just feel like it's kind of undone when we have literally Venom like right there. Like Peter's just having a classic Venom fight, and it's like, so what was the point of making Ben Reilly a Venom archetype when we just have the real deal?
Well, we'll get into that here in a second, because I think there's a legitimate reason for that.
I know, but part of me kind of realized, like in the broader notes, like, oh, okay. Anyways,
well,
sorry.
That's a whole podcast in of itself, just that whole thing. But anyway,
we'll have to do that on a Patreon exclusive.
For sure.
Probably next year.
So we're gonna cheat a little bit. We're gonna do Dark Web and ASM 15 as one go. I was gonna still lead the show. Sorry. Okay, so yeah, in the interest of time, because I know Neil's gonna have to, bounce sooner rather than later, because he's got to be up early in the morning. Like he just said, we're gonna do 15 and 16, and then we're gonna kind of briefly cover. Or do we just want to push Slotman to Patreon? Let's push Slotman out of this episode.
Put Patreon. Put the Patreon, man. Yeah, make them pay for the good stuff, man.
We'll see if it's good stuff. All right. Cover.
I can give you my review of it right now in one word.
It was
just save it. You guys all save it. Save it for the page. Make him pay for it.
All right, fine. Let's talk about Amazing.
I'll make him pay for it.
Let's talk about Dark. Let's talk about Dark Web. Okay, Dark Web. Oh, sorry, Zach. You have something to say? Or?
No. Dark Web. The 2 ASM issues. We will cover all. So we will cover.
We only have one ASM issue after this.
Yeah, there's only one.
We have Dark Web 1 and ASM 15.
Oh, we weren't covering 16.
16 hasn't come out
16
yet.
16 didn't come out yet.
That's next week.
Next week, I think.
Oh, did it? Oh, okay. My bad. I'm sorry.
Okay, so Dark Web number 1, written by Zeb Wells, art by Adam Kubert, colors by Frank Martin. So the book begins with I believe a callback to Uncanny X-Men number 289. Paul, am I correct in that numbering?
I don't know.
Okay. Yes, I can hear you.
No, yeah, I don't remember when. I have to go back to Dark Web right now. I'm not on it right this second, so hold on a second. I'll be on there in a moment. But go ahead.
It's the one where Maddie gets like parts of her body ripped off by Jean.
Oh, dude, I don't remember that. It's been it's like
it's from the original Inferno, so I believe that's.
Is it from X Factor? I want to say it's an X Factor that happens. They have their big fight.
I'm pretty the like dream sequence where Jean is like taking bits off of Maddie and saying like you're not a real girl, ha ha ha.
Dude, it's been a minute.
I'm fairly certain that's Uncanny X-Men, but we'll come back to that later. Anyways,
sure.
Baja Blast is having a bad dream about Peter and MJ stealing bits and pieces off of Ben, calling him a nothing person in a nowhere place. Ben wakes up in poorly rendered colored flames and says, "Hey, Maddie, let's go take back the world." At the Coffee Bean, Peter and the gang are having a celebration of Harry Osborn's posthumous birthday. MJ has, for whatever reason, given up the "I don't want to talk to you" angle anymore and says, "Hey, Peter, want to buy me a coffee?" And Peter says, "How much do I owe you?" You don't have to worry about it, champ. That weird redhead in the snow took care of it. And Peter sees Norman Osborn huddled out in the cold and going, everyone's got to remember a clone of my son, a clone who died in my arms. It's hard not to feel like it was punishment. And Peter decides, you're a different man now, and that man loved his son very much. But if we remember Spencer's last few issues where he sold Harry to the devil, not really. So Norman walks away sad, and we cut back to Limbo, where Ben and Maddie are tampering with Eddie Brock, who, if you have read Ram V and Al Ewing's Venom, if you haven't, I don't blame you. It's kind of bad. And say, "Hey, your mind carries a great weight, Eddie. Let's lighten the load." We change perspectives again to New York again, where the X-Men, which does not include Forge and Sync, even though they're two members of the team, are going around doing Christmas shopping. Iceman is basically like, "Hey, you guys aren't any fun because Firestar is using her heat to warm up Havoc." And Magic sees one of those weird Christmas gnome things say Textus Tenebram or Textus Tenebrarum. I don't know. I don't speak Latin. But according to McNulty, we did this on the other show. He said that this does not translate literally to dark web. I believe it translates to something else. There is actually a different word that he should have used if he wanted to get the exact translation correct. Maddie says, "There's no turning back. Let's keep playing." Maddie slams down the keys, and Peter's spider sense goes off. And all of a sudden, inanimate objects start coming to life all over the city. Peter gets on his piss suit, the piss lights, and says, "You know what? This is why I never go to Rockefeller's at Christmas." And he sees the X-Men battling a Zamboni and ice sculptures. Jesus Christ. Cyclops is like, I don't think we're in the benefit of the doubt territory. Maddie's not here, and maybe giving a woman called Goblin Queen the keys to Limbo wasn't a good idea. Thanks, Magic. You ruined everything. Christmas is now ruined. Norman is looking at his little shrine to the Gold Goblin. He's looking at his Pepsi Man costume when Baja Blast wanders in and says, "Hey, remember me?" Norman's head looks weird in these panels, but Ben's like, I don't remember a whole lot, but I remember you. I remember you a lot. And Norman tries to summon the Goblin Glider to him, and Ben almost gets him, but he summons the glider and turns into Pepsi Man off panel somehow. Before Ben says, "Guess what, buddy? I pose as Peter, and I put a bomb in your gear. Back to formula, bitch." And he blows up Norman, and decides, "You know what? Let's go back to making amends and start beating the absolute crap out of him." In an alleyway, Maddie and Hallows Eve are trying to lure Venom out of the shadows, and Venom says, "We'll have our vengeance." And the issue ends with Venom going back to his characterization before Case and says, "We're going to eat Spider-Man's brains."
Nom nom brain.
We'll talk about that. Okay. So ASM 15, written by Zeb Wells.
And so apparently his clone is Albert Bosniak.
Okay, I'll be honest. People getting like irrationally mad about Nick Lowe having a little bit of fun in the letters page. Chill the hell out, guys. He's just having fun. It wasn't like funny, but it's not worth like saying, "Oh my god, why couldn't he be replaced?" Like, calm down, you guys. Seriously. All right,
everyone, calm down.
All right, ASM 15, written by Zeb Wells, pencils by Ed McGuinness, inks by Cliff Rathburn, and colors by Marcio Menez. So the issue begins with a couple with their baby running away from a bunch of gargoyles. And their baby carriage is turned into an inanimate object too. This is going to eat their baby. And it's stopped by Venom, the lethal protector, who kisses the baby and goes off to kill Spider-Man. After the credits page, it cuts back to Spider-Man, who is expositing about what's happened since the last issue, and says, "You know what? Norman helped me when I lost Mary Jane, and that was quite a pickle. Womp womp. Maybe he can help me now." And Peter finds at Oscorp Ben standing over Norman Osborn, saying, "Hell of a night, isn't it?" Ben introduces himself as Baja Blast and says, "Wait a minute, this was all you?" And Ben says, "Your spider sense doesn't work on him, does it?" Which leads to Venom tackling Peter. And Ben says, "Well, back to work, ruining any and all tension in this issue." Peter has a fight with Venom and says, "Oh, we're going to eat your brains." Chasm traps Kamala Khan in the other place. I don't know. He uses some weird magic shit that I don't know about Marvel. You got to read the Miss Marvel miniseries to go find out about that. I'm not going to. So Paul can take care of that, I guess. I don't know. Peter defeats Fine.
What? I'll read it. It's fine.
Okay. Peter defeats Venom. No, that doesn't happen yet. So at the Threats and Menaces office, Jonah watches a yellow cab shiv an Uber over a passenger. That was the one joke that actually got me to laugh. Jonah goes into his office to see Ben sitting in his chair saying, "New York's not the only thing going to hell." And Peter uses manga to kill Venom. Yeah, he lights a bunch of manga. He uses a bunch of manga. He lights a bunch of manga on fire.
I actually like that.
And
hey,
I like that part.
Josh got some mileage out of this scene. Okay, I'm just saying.
I don't disagree. But he runs into Madeline Pryor, who Peter says, "Hey, you look just like G," and then she cuts him off and says, "Yeah, I'm going to take your mouth if you don't shut up right now." The two mailboxes carry Eddie away. I never thought I would hear that sentence be said. And Maddie says, "You've got other things to worry about. It looks like our mutual friend has completed his chores." And Ben teleports out of nowhere. Enter Cool Steel the Hedgehog. Where were we? To be continued. Okay. Let's do grades around the horn. Okay, actually, real quick, Paul. I didn't get your grade for last issue. We have a little bet going. We have a little bet going to see what your grade was. I want to see what it is.
Probably a B.
Damn, Zach was the closest.
I said B+.
I mean, it's again, like B's not a good grade, so it's not.
B's
B's
good grade.
Semantic. Yeah, I'd say B+. It's like, it's not for me. For something to be an A, I have to really enjoy it. I didn't really enjoy it. I liked it, So if things are okay, well, I mean, if things are okay, it's going to be a B-. If or C+, C-,
Right.
C-, whatever.
That was like, well, that was what I gave it.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Okay.
No offense.
So let's do grades for.
I love you.
Let's do grades for Dark Web #1, and then we'll do grades for ASM 15, and then kind of get into discourse. So,
sure.
Paul, for grades for Dark Web.
Dark Web, probably a C.
All right. Adam.
It was probably C+, B- ish for
Holy
Dark
shit.
Web 1. Yeah.
Okay, Night SoFlo. Zach, what was your grade?
B-.
You guys are going to be really surprised, especially considering the Resident X-Men guy. I'm giving it a D+.
I'm not really surprised about that necessarily.
I'm with Adam on this one.
Wait. Are we talking? Dark Web?
Dark Web.
Dark
Oh.
Web.
Dark Web 1.
Dark. Okay, no. Dark Web's a C-. C-.
Okay. So I think we're in a much more consistent ballpark with the grades now. So
Strongest thing was the artwork. Adam
Yep,
Kubert.
I
it's the
disagree.
same thing. Oh, you're insane.
Okay, there's certain parts. The Venom at the very end of the issue does not look good.
He looks like the movie Venom.
I like how Venom looks.
Yeah, I know. I thought it looked fine. It looked fine. I don't think it looked amazing, but everything else was great.
So I'll put an asterisk on it. This may make it a bit more understandable. The coloring was really good. Frank Martin knocked it out of the park in terms of colors, but the line art is really choppy for me. There's some
That's Adam's style though, man. It's has a very distinct wavy kind of style, to be honest. I mean, look at the original.
I'm not saying like the art style. I'm talking about like how some lines just being not finished.
No, I know. Yeah, you should look at freaking what is it? Wolverine 75 from the 90s, bro. Like it's the same. It's pretty much very much like in that, like his brother, because this is Adam Kubert, right? Not Andy.
Yeah, this is Adam, I think.
Yeah. And Adam, and listen, I prefer Andy. I think Andy is a freaking he's a to me he's the most underrated all-star penciler ever. He's so good. And Adam's really good too, but he has a little more of a artistic flair to his drawings. I feel like Andy's a lot more of how put it this way. This is not a good comparison, but like I feel like he's just like he's almost like a Mark Bagley, but even like he draws a better picture than Bagley. But he's like that workman, like he just knows how to get the job done. He's efficient, but he's not flashy. It's not like he does anything like he's not like an image guy. He never worked as an image guy. I can see Adam being part of the image crew more than Andy, as pure art goes. It's just the art style. That being said, I do think Adam's work it's exceptional, super good. It's definitely a lot more stylized, whereas I think Andy's a little more consistent that way. Whereas Adam's takes a lot more liberties than Adam does, or Adam takes more liberties than Andy does. But I like Adam. It took me a little bit. He's a little bit of an acquired taste, a little bit. Like he's not.
My caveat is that I love his art on Wolverine, which is weird because I think they have the same colorists. I think Frank Martin does the colors on Wolverine as well. But I don't know. There's something about it that just feels very inconsistent to me. At least from page to page, it feels like it's the layout. The layouts definitely are Kubert's, but it feels like some pages feel unfinished. And I get it, like deadlines and stuff. But there's like the establishing page of the X-Men in after they close the door on Eddie to mess with his mind. That page just feels really rough and unfinished. His biggest weakness is definitely like far away shots where he has to do either crowds or characters at a distance. That's where he feels his weakest, definitely, for me.
I feel like some of the scenes, like the scene where she's playing the organ, his art style really does lend to that. But like some of the scene where Peter's, doing his Superman, bit, but and like the Rockefeller big splash page,
a good one.
The Rockefeller part, the Spidey, if it's his eyes, and I have always been a stickler for the eyes. Either I want them either thin or I want them big. Just pick one. I don't care.
It's weird because the page right before that, where Peter's looking down, like it's just a side shot of his face, perfect lens size.
Yes.
It almost looked like Stegman did that page, like the way the eyes are stylized like that.
Agreed. And so, and then like again, the scenes with
I think
Goblin
the X-Men stuff looks like it was filled in the last minute. Just the way it looks very unfinished.
And so I do. Okay, this is the one thing I'll say. I really like that there's a confrontation between Ben and Norman.
Sure.
It's very cathartic, I imagine, for Zach, especially after like
I like that
revelations.
Yeah, so
I like that. I like him beating him up. I like that page.
That was a very solid page, especially.
I've got a lot. I've got a lot to say about this, so I'll wait.
But this is the one thing that I'm like, okay, I'm fascinated because this is a big deal. They could have just swept this under the rug, but no. So I am okay with this part of the story in Dark Web. This is the part that I'm like, I don't hate it because it is something that when they brought back Ben, I've always felt like there needed to be something either between Kane or Ben or Jimmy Six. I mean, I know there was a little bit of that with Spider Hunt, but like there's a grudge to be held between Norman and Ben. There is a grudge between Kane and Norman because of Ben. So like I'm okay with all this. So I'm like, all right, this feels like it actually makes sense. The problem that I have with it is it's cherry picking. Does he have his memories or does he not? You know what I mean?
He has some. We've already established this.
We talked about this last issue. But to me, it feels like Wells is picking the memories so that he can have little moments rather than.
But see, I think we're all missing the point here. It's not the big memories he's pissed off about. It's the little memories. That's the whole thing they bring up in Beyond. Like when Uncle Ben, like he can't remember Uncle Ben's face, and he's like, "Oh my God!" Like it's the small things that what make you who you are. So it's the big things, yes, but it's a consistency that makes Peter Parker Peter Parker. Yes, Spider-Man had a traumatized thing and became, great power comes great responsibility, blah, blah, blah. But Peter Parker at his core was built over years and his lifetime under Uncle Ben and Aunt May. That's the whole point of Beyond, is that he's losing that aspect of it. It's like some of the big stuff he is probably forgetting too, but I would say like he probably remembers a lot of the big stuff, but it's the little things that define Peter that helped define Ben at some point that he held on to, that humanity, that this is why I love the character. This is why I think it's so fascinating, is because those things that define him over that long period of time that held him on, that good-natured person, he's losing that. And that's what he's trying to cling to. And while he's doing that, he's losing his humanity. I freaking love this part of the story.
So I'll say
I don't ever get the sense that Ben is like struggling to I get what you're saying. Like I get what you're thinking of on a conceptual level, but I never get the sense of it actually being executed. Like Ben's always doing like these stupid ass MCU quips.
Right now, yes, but read Beyond. That's what I'm talking about. In Beyond, that whole storyline towards the end, he loses that aspect. There's that whole like Spider-Man issue where he like has like the cobweb thing that he's like, and again when Gleason draws that picture of when Ben's face is gone, like that's what it's telling you. It's telling you all that stuff that he remembers. Those loving moments, those little moments with Ben, not the big ones, the little ones. He's losing them, and it's driving him insane. It's all there. I mean, how many times do we need to tread on it? I don't know. That's just me personally, but it's there.
Like I said, like when I
Ben Norman dynamic that doesn't necessarily work is Ben sacrificed himself to save Peter. At the time, Ben believed he was the original. So, like, there is that element of he did it for the right reasons, but we're just focusing on...
Bye, Paul.
We lost Paul. We're just focusing on the fact that Ben, you know, lost that. So let's move on to our thoughts on.
Well, this is what I was going to talk about. Was that like I get what Paul is saying on a conceptual level about like Ben like struggling to maintain his sanity with all these memories lost. But then, like, he does like these stupid ass MCU quips, like, "Sorry, Peter, your boss slipped and fell. Hell of a night." And then like Venom attacks him. He's like, "Welp, back to work." It just deflated any sense of tension that had to do with Ben as a character.
And I don't disagree with that. I think that
also Miss Marvel's there for no reason.
Yeah, the Miss Marvel thing is just why.
Okay. So I like the way Ed McGuinness draws Miss Marvel. I think Ed McGuinness is like the highlight of any issue he's been on in Wells' run by a large margin. But Miss Marvel's contributions to the story, she's like there for a page. Oh, she gets trapped in the trick room from Pokemon, and then go read her series to find out. Bye, bitch.
Well, this is another thing that I get really kind of mildly irritated about. You haven't done a damn thing with Kamala ever since you brought her on. Now I'm forced to go read this miniseries, and we go from there.
$3.99, please.
So again, I think the strongest thing about this issue, and why I actually give this, we haven't done grades yet, but I give it.
Let's do grades.
B- for me on this one, and it's mainly because of Ed McGuinness's art. He carries this issue for me.
Adam,
this one's a B. 15. 15.
I'll give it a B-. I'm with Zach on this one.
There's a part of me that loves the fact that we got Venom being a bad guy again. I love it. This is the Venom that I desire. I'm not into the Venom anti-hero as a concept. In terms of execution, it was really well done. Don't misunderstand. But as a concept, I'm not into it. I still think that Venom should be a Spider-Man villain. I understand why they did what they did, because corporate synergy and movies and stuff like that. So I'm okay with all that. I'm down for a good old-fashioned Venom Spider-Man fight, and getting Ed McGuinness to draw it was.
So this kind of leads into what my problem was that, one, we're regressing Venom outside of his main book, right? So Wells is derailing Venom's character growth to do whatever to get that classic Peter Venom fight. And I get we're gonna get an explanation for what happened. We're gonna, but it's just like if the plan was to make Ben the new Venom, have this weird goo guy who has it out for Peter and wants to ruin him or take something back from him, then what was the point of turning Ben Reilly into Venom if we're just going to get regular Venom again?
Agreed.
I know Paul's like, well, it's different. No, it's not. They're the same. Archetypically, they are the same fundamental character. Venom is a guy covered in goo who feels Spider-Man has wronged him in a broad way, not specifically the same, but in a broad way he feels Spider-Man has wronged him and will take whatever measures he thinks are necessary to get what he thinks is his. Ben Reilly is a man covered in goo who feels that Spider-Man has wronged him in some broad way and will do whatever he thinks is necessary to get it back. The only difference is that Ben Reilly is teamed up with an X-Men villain to do it, whereas Venom does it on his own.
Yeah. Adam, your thoughts?
The art's great. I liked the Spidey Venom fight, and I liked how cleverly he took him out. I thought that was well done.
I did like that.
I thought it was great. Because this event, like we already mentioned, like, we all seem to be kind of down on this whole X-Men Inferno 2.0 part of this event. But I liked that, and it's very hit or miss for me in this issue. Like, some of the inanimate objects causing chaos is funny, some of it isn't to me. But I think, like, the whole, just the Spidey Venom fight, and then how you know how he beats him, I thought that was clever and well done. And it's funny how the the trees act and everything. And I just thought that was like the highlight of the issue, which is good because it's the main crux, the main point of the whole thing is the battle. So yeah.
I
Other
did
than
love
that,
I did love Wells as Jonah. I think he has a very solid voice for Jonah.
other than that, the Ben stuff is just more of the same for me. Like, I mean, I'm hoping, like, because I'm like I said, I'm not really a fan of it, but I'm hoping that, like, by the end of this, there's some kind of resolution to this, I guess, arc that the character is going through. and I don't like, again, that we get a little nothing hint dropped about the mystery, and it's just like, well, we this happened,
that sure was a thing.
yeah, this happened, but we still don't know what happened yet. And I don't know. It's just annoying.
You are correct. It would be one thing if they didn't acknowledge it at all, and we just kind of waited, and we just waited until, like, it was in the Mary Jane Blackcat book, or it was resolved later on the line. But Wells is consistent, like, hey guys, remember this plot line that none of you like that I keep bringing up for no reason? Here it is again.
Yeah.
Okay, real quick, I do love the way McGinnis draws the drone. There's a very small detail, but the way he has, like, that little eye with the little extension on it, I think that's kind of a cool touch. I'm gonna be honest, I like that. I don't know. I just think Ed McGinnis is putting out very consistently solid work, and I think it's almost too good for this book that's been very inconsistent in its quality.
Yes.
Maybe that's my controversial take.
I just like the artwork overall. I think it's really good. Go ahead, Paul.
Wait, you dislike the artwork?
No, he likes it.
No, he likes it.
No.
I love
okay. I thought. Yeah, that's what I thought. I mean, wait.
the artwork is what gives it B- for me.
Oh, okay. I missed the grades. I'd help my wife for a second.
Right.
So really quickly, kind of wrapping up on the previous thing I had to drop out with Dark Web, and this kind of stemmed from, I think, to be honest, from Zeb Wells' run completely from the start. Is I was not totally in favor of the. I was apprehensive and still a little bit for the whole Norman thing, the whole sins thing. But I gotta tell you, man, through all the events, I'm actually starting to get really into it. And I think part of that's, the Golden Goblin comics that are coming out. They're not the reason. They're not the reason. They're helping flesh that side of the character out. That I'm like, okay, I'm understanding where this is going even better, and I'm really getting into it because I love themes. I like when stories are telling something that's bigger than just bad guys versus good guys. That's what good stories do for the most part. Again, for the most part. That being said, with Dark Web, I like this aspect of, like, Norman is truly struggling. Like, we know now that this is not just him playing a part. Like, all of a sudden, hey, I'm a good guy, or I'm actually a bad guy. It's actually, no, it's all legit. Like, this is the one thing that it's definitive now. All this is 100% real, and it's just like, if you're again, this is where I love the idea, because the whole theme of, if you are a bad person or you did bad things, again, it's all in relative speaking, right? If you're forgiven, how much does that come back to haunt you? Can you forgive yourself? And how much of that is your fault, or how much is that, or is your own choice, or is you're making your own decisions based on, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, those are all very debatable hot topic items. I think people will debate for the rest of the time, to be honest. But those are all the things you're throwing at Norman right now that I think Nick Spencer really set up And I think Zeb Wells is nailing it. And I think Cantwell's doing an exceptional job in Golden Goblin too. And I say all that because I think Dark Web is that's the parts of it, that the first issue, the Dark Web issue, I really liked. And so I just want to say that Dark Web I think is not great with the X-Men side of it, but there are some cool things I think that Spider-Man's mythos are it's exploring that I'm into. Now I say all that with this issue of Spider-Man, with issue 15, I loved it. I think the rotation of McGinnis and JRGR is phenomenal. I think this has been probably the most consistent art in Spider-Man in a long time. Long time. And what I mean by that is, obviously you've got with Spencer, you had Otley, who's great, and he had Roberto was solid, I thought, too. But I think this, when you have we have one book, it's JRGR and Ed McGuinness, two really good current artists, and their styles are not departed enough from each other that they're like jarring, but they're not at all the same. They're not going to be mistake one for the other, right? And there's just something about it. Like I really like the issues that Ed does, and I think he really does a great job following up John Romita Jr. And I like this issue. Again, I don't love the X-Men aspect, but I loved seeing Venom versus Spider-Man. And I get, like, people say, why just make Venom Venom? Venom's never going to go back to the way he was full time. It's just never going to happen. But I will say it was nice to see an old school Spider-Man versus Venom fight. And they gave me, I have no idea why. There's reasons why he's back the way he is. I'll be honest, I'm never going to read it because I have zero shits about that. I'm sorry. I love Ram V.
Real quick, Paul. When I say like why they put Venom back to why they regress Venom, it's not necessarily like I have a problem with Venom going back to, or I recognize that there's like some little differences between Ben and Venom that make them somewhat different characters. But to me, I think the issue is just that, like, Venom didn't need to be here. It's just a filler fight while we're watching Ben do magic bullshit.
Well, listen. I don't disagree with that, but at the same time, this is comic books, man. This is monthly comics, not just like a graphic novel I'm picking up. If it was a graphic novel where I plop down, I want to sit down and read a huge, big old thing about it. Like, I might be irritated with stories like that. This is monthly comics. I want to see fights. I want to see fun, like throwbacks to an extent. I mean, I don't want just that's all it is, because without style without substance is nothing. But this was, I thought, a fun little throwback to Spider-Man versus Venom. Have an excuse to get them together, just like when heroes battle each other out for no dumb, stupid reason. It's just fun to see, and it was nice to see having, like you said. That's probably gonna work for some people, but for this guy who, I'm used to this in comic books, I don't mind being thrown here or there. If it was every other issue, I'd be like, all right, this is a little much. But something like this, it works. We haven't seen an old school Spider-Man versus Venom fight like that since what, 97? It feels like. I mean, at least from that.
With Eddie, we've gotten, like, the not Mac Gargan. We got Mac Gargan as Venom, and then what was
but that doesn't count.
It was Fortune. It was also Fortunato in Marvel.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
This is not.
I know.
Yeah,
what you mean.
It was
yeah,
Mackey's run.
Yeah, and like, this is a fun little fight, and it was just nice to kind of see that old school. Like, I remember I said in our group chat, I said, man, I forgot how much I liked Venom versus Spider-Man fights, and I gotta tell you, I honestly don't think Chasm is not gonna change any of your minds. It's just, regardless of how well it is, I think you guys just do not like the idea of it, which, again, that's fair. But I gotta tell you, when we eventually do have that, I think the fight between Chasm and Spider-Man eventually, like the actual the real knockout fight, which I'm hoping is going to be epic. I don't think it's going to be Dark Web. I don't think you wasted on Dark Web. Maybe I'm wrong. You maybe get a little bit of a fight.
Wasn't the point to wait till Dark Web for a Peter versus Ben fight, and then we get the resolution?
But, I mean, but I don't think you're going to get a resolution of Chasm and Dark Web, to be quite honest.
Oh god, I got chapstick in my eye. Shit.
But the thing is, you're going to I don't think you're sacrifice all that for Dark Web. I think you help Dark Web builds that fight, because like Venom and Spider-Man had a couple of different fights here or there, but they're never there's only a few that are the real knockout drag out fights, like the island fight, right, or the fight with in 375 with a golden foil cover. Those are the memorable fights, or 300 obviously. Those are the memorable fights. They have fights in between there, but the big ones. And I think this will be not a big one. It'll be the first like official fight they have. But there's going to be a real knockout where it's just going to be Chasm, Ben versus Peter, Spider-Man, and it's going to be that emotional drag-out fight. It's going to be. I think it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be interesting. And to me, this is only building that up. And I think with Hollow's Eve now in the picture, it's going to add another layer to the onion of Chasm, which I really like. I just like Chasm. I think I've gone on and on about why I don't relate to him, but I like this idea of someone losing their humanity and thus losing what makes them who they are, which is a form of Peter Parker, renegade Peter Parker with that ZZ Top music that you played earlier.
Also, really quick, I don't like. Okay, can I be honest? I don't really get how Ben have teleporting powers? Because the way McGinnis draws it, it looks like Ben is just kind of teleporting in and out of fights.
Well, he's got the limbo. You can make portals anywhere, I think. So I don't think that's a far-fetched idea.
Okay, I'm just a little confused because Ben does like little anime entrances, and it's like, oh, I guess he's here now. Sure, okay. And you might be right. It's just kind of like jarring to see like a Spider-Man character just teleport in out of nowhere and go, nothing personal, kid.
So yeah, this is the first.
Oh, one last thing.
Yeah,
the Oscorp suit is kind of just window dressing at this point. Like the drone doesn't even do anything. Like I'm surprised. Like,
I like the Oscorp suit. I didn't think I'd ever say that, but I like Bug and all that stuff. I like it.
No, but what I'm saying is that like they make a big deal out of him putting on the piss light suit, and then the only thing it says is like warning, symbiotic entity detected, and that's all it does. Like you would think that Norman would put in like some sonic weapons or something to give Peter like a fighting chance. But it doesn't really. It doesn't. It at this point, it's just kind of like set dressing. It hasn't really done anything visual to say, "Hey, here's what the suit does," other than just make him Spider-Man. Plus,
we'll see in next week's.
Peter has to pay Norman $5.99 a month to get all the features.
Yeah. So next week is Amazing 16, Venom 14, and then Dark Web X-Men number 2, I think.
Yes.
And then we go into January with Gold Goblin 3, ASM 17 and 18, Dark Web Ms. Marvel 2, Mary Jane Black Cat 2, Venom 15, and then the final issue of Dark Web X-Men number 3. So I think there's only 2. Now, is the Mary Jane Black Cat, does that go beyond the...
I don't know. I think so.
Okay. So Dark Web Ms. Marvel, I think, is only 2 issues. So again, we got next month. So next week we'll have ASM 16, but we're not going to cover that till 2023. So yeah, going to be a few more episodes of the CHASMDUDE Experience. So
both on and off the Patreon.
Both on and off Patreon as well. I think there's one episode of Voices from the Eyrie before it goes on hiatus. I think City of Stone number 4, I think, is going to be coming out on Friday, I think. If not, it'll be coming out next week. So, last episodes of this show and of Voices from the Eyrie for 2022 will go into 2023. I think Voices will come back in March. If you want to hear some Inferno coverage, we got Inferno coverage going on with the Sal Buscema era podcasts. So they're covering the actual Inferno Spectacular Spider-Man issues. So there'll be a lot of discussion there. Check that out over on Spidey-Dude.com. So without further ado, let us begin wrapping this episode up. So, minor programming note, I got to redo the video because we've added some patrons, but we'll wrap this episode up with our outro. All right, that wraps up this episode of the Spideydude Experience. Thanks for watching. If you're watching us live on YouTube, if you're listening to us on the audio edition, also thank you. Be sure to give us some feedback on your favorite podcasting catchers. But if you are on the YouTube, be sure to give us a like, a share, and subscribe so you can be notified when the next episode of this show drops, but also our other show on the channel, Make My Mayday, the show all about the Spider-Girl title, the Spider-Girl world, and the world of the MC2. We got our other great shows on the Spideydude Radio Network. Our Spideydude Legacy Vault has Clone Saga Chronicles and Spectacular Radio on it. And then we got our newer shows, such as Voices from the Eerie, Amazing Spider-Man Classic Season 2. And our newest show on the network, Spectacular Spider-Man Sal Buscema Era Podcast. Those four are our newest shows, along with this one, Spideydude Experience. But we've got a new one coming very soon called Books of X. It's going to be a Patreon exclusive. Speaking of our Patreon, I've got to thank our Patreon subscribers before I get out of here. The Vinkman, Scott, Greg, Phoenician, Kale, Georgia, Jessica, Catherine, Cindy, and Jurgen. Thank you guys for your support of the show here on the Spideydude Radio Network. All the money goes in, and it really does help keep the lights on. If you want to be a part of the program, you can do it a couple different ways. You can leave us some feedback on your favorite podcasting catchers, but you can also leave us an email, SpideydudeRadioNetwork@gmail.com, as well as the voicemail line for all the shows here on the Spideydude Radio Network, 818-925-6631. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time here on the Spideydude Radio Network.